Imagine sitting down at a keyboard and just typing out 30 million words.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Just try to picture the sheer physical toll of that for a second. You are formatting over 58,000 pages of text.
That's wild.
Right. Your fingers are cramped, your eyes are just burning from the screen glare. You're sacrificing literally years of your free time.
That's
And
like
it's all to ensure that 250,000 people are never, ever forgotten by history.
it's a scale of dedication that is almost impossible to wrap your head around, especially when you realize this wasn't like a team of hundreds of researchers.
Exactly.
It's not just writing down facts, it is literally monument building, in digital and physical form by one guy.
And that is why we're here. Welcome to a new deep dive into the staggering life, the massive bibliography, and just the absolute sheer willpower of C. Douglas Sterner.
Absolutely.
Our mission today is to explore how this one veteran built this monumental archive of military valor. We're going to look at his catalog of over 125 books.
Which is just a crazy number.
Oh, totally. Plus, his central role in the creation of the Stolen Valor Act and this unparalleled database of military heroes he basically created out of thin air.
Yeah.
And for you listening, we are pulling from a few different places today. His own book catalogs, a really detailed Wikipedia biography, a Fox 31 Notes feature, and veteran tributes records to kind of piece this incredibly complex puzzle together.
And when you look at all these sources combined, you realize you aren't just looking at a historian or like a casual archivist. You are looking at a fundamental force of nature.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the best way I can describe Sterner's work to you listening right now is, well, it's like this. Imagine you realize the National Archives were locked.
Right.
Or maybe they were completely disorganized, or just actively ignoring this massive chunk of important American history. Most people would, write an angry letter to their congressman and just leave it at that.
Yeah, or complain on the internet.
Exactly. But Sterner just sat down at his home computer and decided to build his own Library of Alexandria from scratch.
What's fascinating here is that he didn't just write history down to sit on a dusty shelf somewhere. He actively changed how both the United States government and the broader public preserve the memories of its service members.
Yeah.
He essentially forced a systemic institutional change through sheer, unrelenting individual effort. And to understand how one person builds a monument of that size, you have to look at the wiring of the person who built it.
Which means we really need to go back to his beginnings in Kalispell, Montana. Because long before he was documenting the valor of others, he was actually living it.
It was.
And looking at his early life, the sources paint this picture of a deeply artistic, highly focused kid. He wrote his first poem in the 3rd grade.
Wow, 3rd grade.
Yeah. And for his 8th grade graduation, he didn't just give a normal speech. He borrowed a ventriloquist dummy, practiced relentlessly, and did a full public performance.
Which I think tells you something really vital about his psychology.
Oh.
Well, ventriloquism is a highly specific, uniquely demanding interest for a young kid. It requires this incredible amount of focus, isolation, and practice to master the illusion of making a lifeless object speak.
That's a really good point. And that focus, it only intensifies. By his sophomore year in high school, he is writing an entire, full-length, unpublished World War II novel called The Hero.
Right.
And he's doing this under the mentorship of Ace Powell from the Montana Institute of the Arts. So he is a poet, a novelist, a ventriloquist. He is this deeply creative, artistic soul. But then the timeline shifts dramatically.
It really does.
In 1969, he enlists in the Army and trains as a combat engineer, and he ends up serving 2 consecutive tours in Vietnam from 1970 to 1972, attached to major units like the 101st Airborne, the 1st Cavalry, and the 25th Infantry Division.
And he was highly decorated during those tours, too. He actually earned an Army Commendation for Valor for his actions during Operation Lamb's Son 719.
Wait, what exactly did that involve?
Well, to give you some context on what that means, in February 1971, he was part of the initial wave at a location called Fire Support Base Shepherd.
Okay.
His mission, his specific job as a combat engineer, was to clear this abandoned, highly dangerous base of live mines and booby traps.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so that artillery could be safely airlifted in.
Okay, I have to stop you there because I am genuinely baffled by this trajectory. I am looking at this timeline and trying to connect the dots here.
It's quite the jump.
Right. How does a kid who performs ventriloquism and writes poetry become the guy volunteering to walk into an abandoned base and clear live landmines on a combat assault? On paper, those feel like 2 completely different human beings inhabiting the same body. Is there some hidden link here between an artist's eye for nuance and a combat engineer's precision?
It sounds completely contradictory on the surface, I know, but if you look at the underlying mechanics of what he was doing, the skill set is actually identical.
Really? Identical?
Yeah. Think about the grim reality of what is required to clear a booby-trapped base in a jungle. It is meticulous, step-by-step, hyper-focused attention to detail.
Right.
You are looking for a wire that is almost invisible. You are looking for, like, slightly disturbed dirt. If you let your mind wander for a single millisecond, you do not survive, and neither do the people behind you.
Wow. Yeah, that's intense.
And that exact same mental muscle, the ability to focus intensely on minute details and shut out all other distractions, is what he used to write poetry. And, as his later life shows, it is the exact same mental muscle he used to compile millions of hard data points for his books.
That makes a strange kind of sense. The stakes are wildly different, obviously, but the brain chemistry required to do the job is the same.
Exactly. And the two sides of him never really separated. Even while he was actually in Vietnam in 1972, serving as a combat engineer in a literal war zone, he managed to self-publish his first book.
No way.
Yeah, it was a poetry collection titled In the Master's Hand.
He is literally in a combat theater, and he's self-publishing poetry. That is an unbelievable level of drive.
It really is.
And I think it sets the stage perfectly for his transition from his personal military service to his massive public mission. Let's jump forward a few decades to the 1990s.
Go.
He and his wife, Pam, are living in Pueblo, Colorado, and they're managing HUD-subsidized apartments. They are incredibly active in their local community, and through a series of local civic events they were organizing, they stumble upon this shocking local fact. The city of Pueblo had 4 living Medal of Honor recipients.
Which is an astounding per capita statistic for any city, let alone a modestly sized industrial town.
Yeah.
And yet, despite that concentration of heroism, it wasn't widely celebrated or even known by the general public at the time. Pueblo was just known as the Steel City.
Right. So Doug and Pam Sterner decide that is completely unacceptable. They launch this relentless grassroots campaign to get Pueblo officially recognized.
Yeah.
And they pull it off.
They do.
They start bringing in dozens of Medal of Honor recipients over the years for school visits and conventions, ensuring these veterans are treated with the respect they deserve. Eventually, thanks to their lobbying, Pueblo is officially named America's Home of Heroes.
That's awesome.
It is. But winning that local victory triggered something much bigger in Sterner. Working with these veterans, he realized that American history, specifically the actual citations detailing what these heroes did to earn their medals, was slipping through the cracks. It was largely inaccessible to the public.
Yeah, it was buried in physical paper files, scattered across different department archives in Washington, or in some cases, just lost entirely.
Right.
If a family wanted to know what their grandfather did in World War II, it was a massive bureaucratic hurdle. So Sterner decides he's going to fix it. He literally goes back to school.
Just to fix this issue.
Exactly. He enrolls at Pueblo Community College specifically to learn computer skills. He graduates with a 4.0 GPA, and in 1998, he launches homeofheroes.com.
We have to pause and remember what the internet was in 1998.
Oh, yeah.
You couldn't just drag and drop a website template like you can today. He is dealing with dial-up internet, writing raw HTML, and building digital databases from absolute scratch.
And his output is terrifyingly prolific. By 2001, this website he built in his spare time had grown so massive and comprehensive that he actually partnered with Military Times to curate what became known as the Hall of Valor.
Wow.
This became the largest unofficial database of U.S. military award citations in the entire world.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the sheer scale of what he accomplished makes major institutions look completely incompetent.
It really does.
Sterner identified over 250,000 individual medal recipients out of an estimated 450,000 total awards given above the Bronze Star.
Unbelievable.
He didn't just list their names either. He personally digitized the full citations for all Medals of Honor, all Navy Crosses, all Air Force Crosses, and over 10,500 Distinguished Service Crosses.
And you mentioned making institutions look incompetent. Before he took this on himself, he actually lobbied the Department of Defense to digitize these records.
He tried to get them to do it first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He essentially told the Pentagon, hey, this is vital national history. The government should be preserving and digitizing this. And the Department of Defense actually issued a report concluding that it couldn't be done.
You're joking.
Nope. They stated it was too massive, Too complex and too expensive of an undertaking.
And Stirner basically looked at the entire Department of Defense, said, "Watch me," and went back to his HUD apartment. He started working up to 16 hours a day at his home computer, manually pulling these records, transcribing them word for word, and formatting them for the internet.
It is the ultimate example of a phenomenon we see repeatedly across history. When giant, well-funded bureaucratic institutions fail to adapt or preserve crucial information because it's deemed, too difficult, passionate citizen archivists step in to save our history.
Yeah.
The institution says it's impossible, and the individual just starts typing. He completely democratized access to military history.
But there is a fascinating ripple effect to building a perfect archive like that. When you build the most comprehensive, easily searchable database of true heroes on the internet, you inevitably and immediately expose all the frauds.
Oh, absolutely.
If someone's name isn't in Stirner's database, they didn't earn the medal. Period.
Exactly. Because once the truth is easily verifiable and accessible to the public, the lies become glaringly obvious. People who had been pretending to be war heroes for decades suddenly had a spotlight shining directly on their fabricated records.
Which brings us to the next massive chapter in his life, the Stolen Valor Act.
Right.
In 2004, Stirner's wife, Pam, is a political science student at Colorado State University, Pueblo. She writes this really detailed college paper on the growing, pervasive problem of people faking military awards for personal gain. She used the term stolen valor, which was a concept coined a few years earlier by an author named B.G. Burkett. So Doug and Pam take this college paper, and they're just, get a grade and move on.
Of course not them.
No. They start aggressively lobbying their local congressman, John Salazar. They push the issue tirelessly, and in 2006, the Stolen Valor Act is passed by Congress and signed into law by President George W. Bush. It made wearing or claiming unearned military awards a federal crime.
But the legal battle didn't end there. In 2012, the law faced a massive challenge, and the Supreme Court actually struck it down in a divided decision.
Right.
The court ruled that simply lying about military medals, while morally contemptible, was protected free speech under the First Amendment.
Now, I have to push back here because I think a lot of people listening might actually agree with the Supreme Court on this one. Let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it.
Why spend years fighting for a federal law over this? If some guy lies about having a silver star to get a free round of drinks at a local bar, he's a jerk. He's pathetic. But making that a federal crime, getting the FBI involved, that feels like a massive overreach for what is essentially just bragging. Does it really hurt anyone in a tangible way?
This raises an important question, and it is a debate that goes to the very core of why Stirner dedicated his life to this cause. It's about a concept that historians and military ethicists call the Pyramid of Honor.
The Pyramid of Honor.
Yeah, think of it visually. At the massive base of this pyramid, you have the millions of men and women who served honorably. As you move up, you have fewer and fewer people who earned higher awards for valor. At the very top, you have the Medal of Honor.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
These awards aren't just decorative pieces of metal or fabric. They are the literal currency of valor. They represent, in very real, documented cases, people who threw themselves on live grenades or medics who ran into machine gun fire to drag someone to safety. If anyone can casually claim these medals without any consequence, the actual blood and sacrifice of the real recipients is diluted and devalued. It ceases to mean anything if everyone can just say they have one.
So it's almost like an information ecosystem issue. If you flood the economy with fake $100 bills, the real ones in your wallet lose all their purchasing power.
That's a great way to put it.
The law wasn't about punishing a guy at a bar. It was about protecting the currency of actual sacrifice.
That is the precise logic the Stirners operated on, and to look at the political and legal history of this completely impartially. The Supreme Court ruled strictly on the constitutional speech aspect regarding the 2006 law, but the legislative branch clearly agreed with the Stirners' underlying premise about protecting the integrity of the awards.
How so?
Because after that devastating 2012 Supreme Court ruling, the Stirners did what they always do. They didn't give up.
Shocker.
Right. They went right back to work drafting new language. And in 2014, a modified version of the Stolen Valor Act passed the House and Senate with near unanimous approval.
What was the difference this time?
This one specifically criminalized lying about military medals if the lie was used to obtain a tangible financial benefit, like a veteran's grant or a job. They even documented this entire grueling, multi-year legal and emotional fight in their book, Restoring Valor.
The fact that they wrote a book about the legal fight is the perfect pivot to discuss his larger bibliography. Because while the law protects the medals, his books protect the actual memories. His massive digital database eventually birthed a physical monument.
Hmm.
We're talking about a sprawling, multi-format bibliography designed specifically to be read by very different types of people.
It is an incredible volume of output. We're looking at over 125 published books.
Yep.
That is where the 30 million words and 58,000 pages metric comes from. And he made sure they were accessible to everyone, regardless of how they consume media. He released them in hardback, paperback, and Kindle formats.
And the subjects cover an astonishing range. He has books breaking down heroes by specific military divisions, like the 1st Infantry. He covers the service academies in deep detail. West Point, the Naval Academy, the Air Force Academy.
Right.
He even dives into special interest groups that often get completely overlooked by mainstream history, like the Japanese-American 100th 442nd Infantry in World War II, Vietnam POWs, and the Navy Medical Corps. But when you really analyze his catalog, there's a very distinct contrast. He produces 2 main categories of books, and they serve entirely different purposes.
Yeah, let's break that down. The first category is what we can call the Valor Medal books, which is part of the United States Military Heroes series.
Right.
These are physically massive volumes. They are 8.5 by 11-inch books, and most are well over 500 pages long.
If you were holding one of these, it literally feels like you were holding a cinder block of history.
Exactly. They are essentially highly analytical, strict databases printed in physical form. If you open a Valor book, you aren't going to find flowery prose. You will find the exact military citations, the raw personal data of the service member, and incredibly deep statistical appendices. You can find breakdowns of awards by specific rank, by unit, by military occupational specialty like the MOS code, by the recipient's hometown, and even by their exact burial location.
So the Valor books are like an incredibly dense statistical encyclopedia. It's a genealogist's dream or a military tactician's reference guide. It's just raw data.
Yes.
But then you have the second category, which is the Beyond Belief series. This was a collaborative effort where he actually worked with a dozen different authors. And these books are short stories of heroes that, as the title implies, literally defy comprehension.
They really do.
He has specific volumes dedicated to aviators, chaplains, civilians, great escapes, and heroes from specific states like Colorado and Montana.
Yeah.
But the strict, unbreakable rule for this series, absolutely no hyperbole, no literary license whatsoever.
They didn't need to embellish anything, honestly, because they rely on the fundamental premise that truth is not only stranger than fiction, it is far more compelling.
It's the perfect analogy. If the Valor books are the dense statistical encyclopedia, the Beyond Belief series is like an anthology of blockbuster action movie scripts.
Yeah.
Except every single explosion, every rescue behind enemy lines, every impossible act of bravery is 100% historically verified by the guy who typed out the citation.
Right. And this contrast is exactly why his bibliography is so vital to historical preservation. He understood that history needs to serve different audiences to survive.
That makes a lot of sense.
The Valor books serve the researchers, the historians, and the families who need raw empirical proof. They need the hard data. But the Beyond Belief series serves the general public. It translates that raw, dry data into compelling narratives that inspire everyday people.
Yeah.
You absolutely need the rigid database to protect the truth, but you need the storytelling to make people actually care about that truth.
So what does this all mean? When we zoom out and look at the entirety of Doug Sterner's life, from the kid writing poetry and practicing ventriloquism in Montana, to the combat engineer clearing booby traps in Vietnam, to the man spending 16 hours a day typing out citations because the Pentagon said it was too hard. What is the real takeaway here?
It's a big question.
It is. For you, listening right now, I think his life proves that being well-informed or preserving history isn't just a job for the government. It's not a task reserved solely for massive institutions with endless funding and thousands of employees. True expertise and true preservation almost always starts with insane curiosity and a willingness by one person to do the deeply unglamorous work.
It is the willingness to sit down in a chair and do the work when everyone else says it's impossible. And it's important to note, based on the sources, he's not done.
Really?
Yeah, Sterner mentioned that he wants to document heroes from all 50 states for his Beyond Belief series, assuming, as he put it, his tired old body allows it. He just keeps pushing the boulder up the hill.
He just keeps typing. Which leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over as you go about your day. If one man, sitting at a computer in a HUD apartment in Colorado, could dig up and digitize the forgotten heroics of 250,000 people, it makes you wonder.
Yeah.
How many incredible true stories of human achievement, maybe in your own hometown or even hiding right now in your own family tree, are currently sitting in a dusty box in an attic, just waiting for someone with enough patience to digitize them before they fade away forever? You don't have to